Hey there guys, what's going on? Sloppy here for another free-to-play Friday, and this week I checked out this really interesting game. I was going through the free-to-play list, and this one caught my eye because it's very strange. It's called Heavy Metal Machine. It's still in active development, so it's still improving, you'd hope, but it's a free-to-play battle car arena MOBA. It's really interesting. It's basically a MOBA type thing. There's a bomb in the middle of the course, and you're trying to deliver the bomb to the opponent's base, and basically, depending on what rule set you're playing with, the first to bomb the opponent's base 3 times wins in the normal mode. There's a bunch of different cars that all have different abilities, and you can destroy opponents' cars, you can destroy your own car, and basically you're trying to stop the bomb from making it to your base while delivering it to their base, and if you're the car carrying the bomb, you can't, you have like a path you can go through. You can't go through these barriers, but everyone else can. So if you're the bomb carrier, you have quite a distance to go, whereas everyone else can go right through. And there's all sorts of different cars. Some are sort of tanky and have a ton of health that are supposed to be for carrying. Some do a lot of damage. Some are really fast. It's a really interesting game. It sort of turns into a crash derby with all kinds of abilities and fireballs and support classes. And it's a really interesting concept. You can see some of the gameplay. It's really different. It's got this heavy metal soundtrack that runs through the whole thing. I didn't play it for a ton of time because of some issues that we'll talk about in just a second, but let's talk about some of the pros of this game. The game looks pretty cool. It's a top-down MOBA-esque. It has pretty MOBA-like graphics, but with the cars and stuff, it looks pretty neat, and it runs really well. I never ran into really any bug that made the game run poorly or anything. It was pretty interesting, and it's very fast-paced. That's another pro that I wrote down. Very fast-paced action, so combine that with looking pretty good and running well. That's a really cool vibe. There's a bunch of different cars to choose from, and they all play very differently, and they each have their own set of abilities and strengths and weaknesses and stuff. And they all feel very different. It's very MOBA-esque in terms of choosing your character, your hero, your car, and them being all very different. They each have benefits, and you know, you can play them very differently, and it really changes how you play the game, which is pretty neat. It feels very unique and different. I can't say I've really ever played a game like this. It's really quite an experience. It's very different from anything I've ever really played. The best I could say is it kind of... I don't know. I don't even know. It really is a cool experience. It's really quite crazy. The game mode that they have in the game, they basically have one game mode, or you can do custom games, is pretty fun. It's just deliver the bomb, and it takes a while to get the bomb. There's sort of a cool drift mechanic. Controls very cool. The cars feel sort of weighted, and you got drifting and stuff. It's a pretty fun game mode. It's pretty interesting, and it's very fast-paced and cool. There's a whole leaderboard system, which is just kind of neat to have in a game like this. They're very detailed. You can sort of search by very specific things, and that's just nice to see in a game like this. Kind of gives you things to aim for. The last pro I wrote down, the soundtrack is super high energy, heavy metal. Which for some people is a bonus, for some people it's not. The sound design is pretty good, the cars sound cool, the abilities sound pretty neat, but the soundtrack's just this super high energy metal, which if I was playing any longer than I did, I probably would have turned off the music. But it's pretty cool. If you're into heavy metal especially, it's pretty good heavy metal, so that's cool. Now let's talk about cons, because this is where the game all falls apart. They have no North American servers currently, they only have the EU and South American servers. And I'm in North America, so the ping was really high, which basically made it unplayable. The only games that you're seeing on the screen is actually one game, because everything else I recorded, the ping was so bad and whatnot that I could really only play against bots, which, to be fair, being new to the game, was actually very competitive and fun. The bots are pretty good. But with no North American servers, that's sort of a big no. The wait time, when I did try and connect to servers, was about 7 minutes expected, and at 10 minutes I just left and went back to playing bots because I wasn't connecting to anything. So I don't think there's much of a player base currently, but hopefully that changes. It is a little repetitive. After playing a couple games, I was like, okay, every game's pretty similar. The gameplay is fun, so that might not be a terrible thing, but it's very repetitive, so that kind of sucks. And for controller support, you can only use an Xbox 360 controller, which I did for one game, and it does feel pretty good, but I think the majority of people probably wouldn't have a 360 controller or not to connect to your computer, and so I played a lot with the mouse and keyboard, and it was a little bit awkward, but you get used to it, but it feels kind of weird. I would definitely recommend using a controller if you can and want to try this game. But mouse and keyboard does work, it's just a little awkward. Sort of my overall, those are sort of the cons, which, yeah, and it's a little repetitive, and there's no North American servers, and there's not much of a player base, so that kind of sucks for cons, because the game is really cool and unique. And sort of my overall impressions slash miniature review is that this game is definitely worth a download just to play against bots and try out, because it's really cool. And I mean, I'm going to follow it just to see if they add North American servers and if they can get a player base. I think if they added North American servers and got a player base, this could be a really cool game. I really enjoyed it. It's really neat. So that's sort of my overall impression is if they can get the servers where I am, which, you know, for people in the EU and South America, it's great. I still don't think there's much of a player base, so that's still an issue, but the ping wouldn't be as high. So if they add North Americans and get a player base, I think this game could be really interesting. I think they also need to add more game modes, because I think the way they have the game set up with the cars and all the systems, I think there's a lot of room for a lot of really cool game modes, which would add more replayability and etc, etc. Either way, I was really impressed with this game. I think it's really cool. It obviously has some big cons. The gameplay, though, is really fun. It's very fast-paced, and it feels so different from anything I've played before, which is always a pretty cool feeling. So I would definitely recommend checking out Heavy Metal Machine. The cons are pretty big, and it does kind of suck that it's hard to get in a game with any real people. But, I mean, the bots are pretty competitive if you're into that. Either way, leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Subscribe for more. I'll catch you guys next time. Ciao!